I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is Marcus Collins.
A brand is an identifiable signifier that conjures thoughts and feelings in the minds and hearts of people. They're these vessels of meaning that conjure up affects and cognitions within people in association to these products, companies, people, and the like. A brand may intend to want to mean something, but the hope is that the way in which the brand shows up, the way the brand moves, its kinetics, it activates or translates in the minds of people in such a way that there is congruence between what the brand wants to mean and what it actually means in the minds of people.
Dr. Marcus Collins is an award-winning marketer and cultural translator. He currently serves as head of strategy at Wieden+Kennedy New York and as a clinical assistant professor of marketing at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. Prior to his advertising tenure, Marcus worked on iTunes and Nike sport music initiatives at Apple and ran digital strategy for Beyoncé. Before we get started, I just want to say that support for On Brand and all shows on the Marketing Podcast Network is provided by Active Campaign. If you're looking for a way to grow your business, you need to check out Active Campaign. It is a powerful marketing automation platform that can help you increase your sales, improve your customer service, and build stronger relationships with your customers. With Active Campaign, you can create and send email campaigns, manage your leads and customers, create landing pages, set up automated workflows, and track your results, all in one approachable platform. Active Campaign has over 10,000 five-star reviews on G2 from happy customers. Preview Me is one. They're a B2B software company that uses Active Campaign to send their prospective customers highly visual and personalized emails as they progress through CRM stages, such as completing a demo. This has increased their click-through rate 96%. If you are serious about growing your business, you need to check out Active Campaign. Try it today for free and see how it can help you achieve your goals. For a limited time, Active Campaign is offering listeners of the On Brand podcast a chance to double your contacts for free when you sign up at activecampaign.com/activate. That means if your email list has 10,000 contacts, you only need to pay for 5,000. Or you can pay for the 10,000 and get an extra 10,000 totally free. Personalize your customer experience, but do it with automation, just like 185,000 businesses have at Active Campaign. Go to activecampaign.com/activate to sign up today. That's activecampaign.com/activate. Terms and conditions apply. As a business-to-business marketer, your needs are unique. B2B buying cycles are long and your customers face incredibly complex decisions. Isn't it time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you? LinkedIn ads empower marketers with solutions for you and your customers. LinkedIn ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful manner. On LinkedIn, you'll have access to and build relationships with decision makers. Of the 875 million users on the network, 180 million are senior level executives, 10 million are C-level executives. You'll also be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools built specifically for B2B. And they work. Audiences exposed to brand messages on LinkedIn are 6 times more likely to convert. LinkedIn ads is also ranked number 1 for security, community, and ad experience as part of Business Insider's Digital Trust Study. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. Marcus Collins, welcome to On Brand.
Thanks for having me, Nick. I'm super stoked to be here.
You know, you have a lot of ampersands in running text in your bio. That's the word nerd update from your local neighborhood podcast host.
That's great.
So, talk more about being a a cultural translator. I love that set of words, but I'll confess, I don't know exactly what it means.
Well, I think about cultural translator, I think in very literal terms, that my role in a lot of ways is to help translate culture, the culture of a particular group of people for brands, but then also translate the culture of a brand for a particular group of people in hopes that we'd find congruence between the two, in hopes that we'd find a convergence in which they say, oh, we see the world similarly. And what happens from a commerce perspective is that those people who subscribe to a particular cultural characteristics, they use the brand not only for their functional needs, but more so as a means of communicating their identity to the world. Right? They become identity projects or strategies by which these people realize their identity projects. And likewise for the brand, you now have a group of people that buy from you, not because of what you are, but because of who you are. I think that's a really powerful thing. So being someone in the middle to help translate the beliefs, the artifacts, the behaviors, the language of a group of people for a brand provides opportunity for the brands to engage those people, to contribute to those people's cultural practices. Likewise, having someone to communicate what this brand is all about, how this brand sees the world to a particular group of people helps bridge what normally would be a gap that is, you're a company, I'm a person, are you the right brand for me? So sitting in that seat as a both practitioner and as an academic helps bridge the gap between these two entities such that they find congruence between the two.
So you talk about bridging the gap, and as someone you have a background in engineering, it seems like that bridging that you can't just go about that willy nilly. Building a bridge is something that that has a lot of, to overextend the metaphor even once again there, it has a lot of structural support. So where do you start with that process of bridging between a culture and a brand?
That was really well done, by the way. I like that metaphor. You're right.
Again, it might have been too much, but
no, I like it. Let's go for it. I mean, you're right. Like, bridges have structure and they have integrity, and it takes time to build a bridge. And bridges, literal bridges, they are they exist, or their usage comes when there's trust established. And what is trust? Trust is, like the way the literature puts it, says trust is the mechanism that absorbs uncertainty, the I don't know what, right? And when it comes to bridges, I drive over this bridge trusting that its structure and integrity is going to hold up. I think the same thing goes when it comes to brands. When we talk about building these bridges between the brand and people, it starts with, well, what does the brand believe? How does the brand see the world? I mean, if we just go down to what exactly is a brand, right? A brand is an identifiable signifier that conjures thoughts and feelings in the minds and hearts of people in related to a company, a product, a person, institution, or organization, right? They're these vessels of meaning that conjure up affects and cognitions within people in association to these products, companies, people, and the like, right? So a brand may intend to want to mean something, but the hope is that the way in which the brand shows up, the way the brand moves, its kinetics, it activates or translates in the minds of people in such a way that there is congruence between what the brand wants to mean and what it actually means in the minds of people. So it starts with, what do we believe? How do we see the world? And what do we intend to mean in the minds of people? Do we want to be just shoes people put on their feet to protect them? Or do we want to stand for something far greater? Do we want to be something that people just run in, sneakers? Or do we want to stand for the belief that every human body is an athlete? Which one? And based on our belief, how we see the world, we then say, okay, here's how we see the world. This is our conviction, right? This is what we intend to mean. And everything we're going to do as a brand, how we communicate ourselves, the products we bring to market, the implicit and explicit signaling that we do to say who we are, Can we do it in such a way that people see us the way we want to be seen? And when people do, they go, oh, that brand is for me, because the way that brand sees the world is exactly how I see the world. Now, I use the brand as a way of signaling who I am to the world. Well, how did that happen? We start with who we are, finding people see the world the way we do, and then we begin to start building structural integrity between how we show up in the world with these people, so that over time, people trust us.
Way to bring it back to the metaphor there of of the bridge. But that was fascinating talking through. And you even brought we were on engineering. You even brought the physics of movement and kinetics into it. Are there brand touch points that play an outsized role when it comes to that cultural translation and bridging?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the kinetics of it all. It's not enough for what you say, it's what you do, right? The Migos said it, you got to walk it like you talk it, right? You got to walk the talk, and trust is established when we see people's actions and their words align, right? It's the combination of the two that we're more inclined to trust it. So it's not enough to have great copy. You have to be demonstrative in your behavior. The other part to that is that you have to have people who are willing to vouch for you, right? People who are willing to advocate on your behalf, even to evangelize on your behalf. Jay-Z has this really great line in a song called Takeover. He says, "We don't believe you. You need more people." Right? We don't believe you. You need more people. And the same thing goes when it comes to brands, right? We only believe you when other people say, oh yeah, it's great. Why? Because we trust people more than any form of marketing communication, right? More than television, print, out of home, native ads. In fact, we trust strangers more than we trust marketers, which would be super sobering for marketers, right? We trust Sexy Lover 24 from Denver, his review on the product more than we trust the actual brand who's making the product, right? Like, we rely on people. It's just deep in our humanity to rely on people. So for brands, it's not enough to us to say it. We have to walk the talk, right? Even in the face of adversity, look at today's current landscape. Even in the face of adversity, we have to walk the talk, stand on our conviction, even if we're the only ones. And then we need people who are willing to vouch for us, the credence of people like me. And when that happens, we're more inclined to trust.
And big shout out to Sexy Lover 24 in Denver too. If you're listening, you know the role that you play for marketers everywhere. I love that. I mean, like you said, it is sobering for marketers, and I think the other aspect of this that is sobering is, as marketers, I feel like we are always on the lookout for the easy box to check. And what we're talking about here, it's not easy boxes to check. Moreover, it is not we've done that, box check, moved on to the next thing. I would imagine that there is a process, an ongoing work. Talk about what the day-to-day of cultural translation, trust building, and getting more people looks like.
So I wrote about it in my book, For the Culture. And the idea is that these things, they're not a moment in time. They're not like, to your point, check the box. I did it. Now move on. It's not an event. It's buffering. It's always in action, right? And it's always evolving. It's always at work. These have to be a part of the lifestyle of the brand as much as it is the lifestyle of the people. So I think about culture through a Durkheimian lens. Emil Durkheim, one of the founding fathers of sociology, talks about culture, and I'll paraphrase, it's sort of a system. I call it a system of systems that consists of conventions and expectations that govern what people like us do, right? The beliefs that we hold, the artifacts that we don that are meaningful, the behaviors that are normative, the language that we use, the way by which we communicate in code to say that you're one of us. The alchemy of these systems, they constitute our culture. And it's a system of daily living. It is how it governs how we show up in the world on a day-to-day basis. So brands who want to contribute, to participate in, to tap into the richness that is culture, it must also be the governing operating system of how that brand shows up, navigates the world on a day-to-day basis. That's why when we ask me like how do we start with this translation process, that bridge we're talking about, it has to be true. It has to be true, and it has to be demonstrated, lived by the brand. And it's that convergence of the brand's belief, its ethos, its ideologies, and the ethos and ideologies of a group of people that you get the convergence that consists of community, and where the brand is consecrated within these communities, these subcultures, not as a mark of ownership for these particular products, but they become a mark of identity by which I communicate who I am. And I use consumption as a way to connect with people who are like myself. So these marks of ownership evolve from identity marks to becoming community marks. But it only works if that's who the brand is every day. That's how it shows up. But if you only show up when it's convenient, we feel like it's not real. It doesn't feel authentic or feels disingenuous.
On Brand will be right back after this.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Smallwood hosts a great podcast called Small Business Success Talk. Christy, tell us what these fine folks will get out of listening.
Well, you get the feeling of not being alone in building a small business. My guests have shared their success stories, their biggest challenges, their best practices, the passion for what they do, and what success really means for them. It's a mix of mindset, heart, and how-tos for the small business community to learn from each other.
Awesome. Where can people subscribe?
You can go to smallbusinesssuccesstalk.biz, or you can find the show at marketingpodcasts.net, or you can search for Small Business Success Talk wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Sarah Panous hosts a great podcast called Marketing with Empathy. Sarah, tell us what these fine folks will get when they listen.
Marketing with Empathy is a weekly podcast, and it's designed for brand content marketers who want to connect with their audiences through storytelling and are looking for help to do it better, plus enjoy that recognition, growth, and just joy that comes from creating great work.
Awesome. Where can people subscribe?
Yeah, head on over to marketingpodcast.net and you will see the Marketing with Empathy show there. Otherwise, wherever you listen to podcasts, you'll find Marketing with Empathy.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
Now, back to the show. So you brought up your book, For the Culture. Talk about what drove you in the work that you're doing to take on the task of a book.
So I found myself, like many marketers, particularly in advertising, using language that I didn't truly understand with great rigor. You know, we often say, let's get our ideas out into culture and what's happening in culture. And our ideas need to be informed by culture, right? And if you ask 5 people to define culture, especially in marketing advertising, you'll get 35 different answers. And that is a problem, right? If we can't explain a thing concretely, how do we ever operationalize it, right? If we don't know the mechanisms that govern how it works, how do we ever leverage its power? And for culture, that is unbelievably critical, because there's no external force more influential in human behavior than culture, full stop. Like everything we do is informed by, dare I say, governed by culture. And for marketers, that's really important because our job is to get people to adopt behavior. And if there's no force more influential in human behavior than culture, then culture is our biggest cheat code. And we know this intuitively, but we don't have the language to describe what culture is. And therefore, we're not really good at leveraging the power of culture in any sustainable way. So that became the pragmatic reason why I wrote this book. Like, oh, we need a better Rosetta Stone to talk about culture so that we might be able to fully leverage its power. And so I set out to write the book to provide language, not only for marketers, but anyone with a vested interest in getting people to move, whether you're an advertiser, a marketer, a manager, an entrepreneur, a leader, a politician, activist, clergy, educator, like anyone. I'm trying to help people get people to move. And while I'm writing this book from a practical perspective, providing perspective, language, and the skills to actually leverage it once we know what it is, I started realizing there were personal reasons for writing this book that I wasn't aware of until I got towards the end of the book. And it's that I grew up, with a penchant for math and science. And, in my coming of age in the 90s, if you did well in math and science and you were Black, you were going to be an engineer, full stop. They're just what you were going to be. So that's why I studied engineering, material science engineering. And I went into engineering at the University of Michigan. I love dearly. It's why I teach here now. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I want to be an engineer. I thought it was interesting, but I wasn't interested, if that delineation makes sense. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life. I didn't think so. So I came home after my freshman year of college, said, Mom and Dad, I don't know if I want to be an engineer. And my mother's an academic, and she goes, oh, wait till you get into your major. You'll love it. My dad goes, yeah, totally. You'll love it. So I went back my second year, and I did not love it. I'll be honest, Nick, I didn't love it. So I started taking some music theory courses to offset my terrible GPA. And I started falling in love with music theory with major sevens. And I came home that summer and said, Mom and Dad, I know what I want to do for the rest of my life. And they go, out with it. I go, I want to be a musician, a songwriter. They go, oh, no, you don't. That is not happening. And I ended up finishing my engineering degree, and I'm grateful that I did. Now, at the time, I did it begrudgingly. And what I realized when I was writing the book is that if I had described what was happening to me in those years, I would have just said that my parents were bugging. My parents don't get me. My parents don't understand. As Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince told us, parents just don't understand, right? But what I realize now is that I was being influenced by culture, the conventions and expectations of people like me, what people like me ought to do. In those days, if you were Black and you did well in math and science, you were supposed to be an engineer. Those were the expectations. And I followed those expectations, even though I wasn't sure I really wanted to be one. And I finished my engineering degree, even though it was tough and it was painful. I finished the degree because that's what I was supposed to do. Likewise, from a metacognitive perspective, my parents were also being influenced by culture. What does it mean to be a good parent? It means to push, to rear your children into a profession with a higher likelihood of success, even if it's something they don't really want. Even if it's something they're not truly interested in, this is what a good parent does, and they'll thank me later, right? And so we both were being influenced by these external forces that were telling us what people like us ought to do. And because we didn't have good language, we didn't have very much agency. I didn't have very much agency to navigate the space. And my parents and I, didn't have very much agency to have discourse. We didn't have the rhetoric to enter a discourse about this thing. So we were at loggerheads the 5 years that I was in school. I did 5 years because I wasn't a great student, not 4 years. So there's a pragmatic and a personal reason. And that's kind of, to me, what makes the book so powerful. If I can, sort of be self-congratulatory here, is that it's not a marketing book. And I say this very declaration in the first chapter. It's not a marketing book. It's a people book. And if you have a vested interest in getting people to move, this book is for you. Likewise, I think that if we start to realize that the world is not objective, that it's subjective, that is, that we see the world through cultural lenses, then we start to realize that our truth isn't as fixed as we believe, right? That we all live by different operating systems. And what does that mean for marketers? What it means is that if a brand is a vessel of meaning, that meaning is being negotiated and constructed through people's cultural lenses. That our meaning for our brand is not fixed. It is formed by the way people see the world, which means for us, we have to see the world through many different lenses so that we might be able to communicate our intended meaning to the right people at the right time within the right context, in hopes that there is meaning congruence and ultimately they're willing to take action on our behalf.
I love that. I mean, so much of what you said, and it all, like you said, comes back to the power of language. And I think especially when talking about the work that you're talking about, how we, to overuse the phrase, talk about it, is so important. And you can string together whole sentences, whole paragraphs about cultural competencies and not really say anything. And I am so excited about this book because, I mean, I think on a number of topics, we struggle with business speak anyways, but especially with actually trying to, as you said, move people. And I love the idea that it's not a marketing book. It is a people book. Because I think that this is a book that a lot of us need. So speaking of people, I love when we get someone on that, like me, has a foot in both worlds, of both the world of brand building with clients out there and teaching. Shout out to the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. I teach at the University of Iowa's Tippie School of Business.
Awesome.
So go Big Ten.
Big Ten. Look at us doing it.
I know. So my question is, managing those feet that you have in different places, what do you bring from the real world into the classroom? Because boy, you dropped a lot of great definitions on us in that last one about a brand being a vessel of meaning and it's not fixed. I feel like nothing in marketing right now is fixed. And that's a challenge in teaching it. So how does that work its way into your approach to teaching marketers at this challenging time?
Yeah. So I think the question is well said, and it is a challenge. It is a great challenge. I think this is where the engineering part of me starts to rear its head. So I'm grateful. I'm very, very grateful. Like, my parents were right. I should have continued engineering. I'm glad that I did, because I actually think like an engineer. I approach problems like an engineer. I always ask myself, what's the underlying physics of the situation, right? Because to everything, there's a system, right? There's a system at play. I think about culture like a system. In everything around us, there is a system. Everything in the natural world, there's a system. So I try to teach from the perspective of, let's start with know why so we can get to know how. Let's understand why things are the way they are so that we understand the properties, the mechanisms that make up the underlying physics of the thing that we're observing, so that we might be able to leverage it. So I start with theory all the time. Theory it's the best description of the world around us, right? And we use theory for everything. I mean, I hate that saying in business that, what is say, that works in theory. I go, yeah, of course it does. What do you mean? Yes, that works in theory. Duh. And the challenge is that, or the issue is that we use theory for everything. Everything. The challenge is that we typically use bad theory for the application. So the notion for my teaching approach is to provide the best theory to describe the phenomenal world around us. So the students go, okay, I know the underlying physics of what I'm experiencing. Like, oh, I understand what's going on. These people are doing this because these are the cognitions and the affects that are ruminating inside of them, and because of their cultural subscription, they behave thus and so. Awesome. Now, that is the challenge that I'm observing. Now, what tools do I have in my arsenal to actually do something about it? Now, that's where I go from taking the theories to the application, and I use all the years of practice that I've had to say, here's how I've approached this problem using these theories and these solutions. And what I find, there's that quote from David Ogilvy, and he says, the big ideas are usually simple ideas. And what I find myself saying is that quote over and over for students, that like, this isn't about being the most creative idea ever, because sometimes the most creative idea ever is a very, very simple idea. Yeah. Very, very simple idea. Right? Go back to Nike. Every human body is an athlete. It is provocative and it is profound, but it's very simple. And it's through that lens that every single thing that Nike does manifests. Every human body is an athlete, big, small, short, tall. We're all athletes. And since we're all athletes, there's nothing keeping us from realizing our best athletic self than us. So what does Nike tell the world? Just do it. Whoa. Whoa. Everything that Nike does is a demonstrable representation of that very thing. And if students can understand why that works for people, that like, oh, because of how I see the world, my cultural subscription, the meaning-making frames that I use to translate the world, that when this brand says that thing, because I see the world similarly, I consume as a cultural act, as a way of making my culture material, so that it's not about the value propositions of the product. It's about what the product signifies, what it means, and what gives these products meaning. Brands. Oh, okay. So if I'm building a brand, where should I start? Well, I should start with the thing that's the most important part. What do we believe? What do we intend to mean in the hearts and minds of people? Awesome. Now I can start making decisions. And so I go back and forth between understanding the theory, the know why, to get to the know how. And when students see that play out in case studies, they go, oh, okay, I can see how those dots connect. And then I give them a chance to actually exercise the muscles. It's not enough to have the knowledge and the concepts. You got to have action-based learning, which we do a lot here at Ross, right? How do I put it into action so that they not only have the concept in their head, they have the language by which they can describe the world around them, but now they also have some skill set so that once they get into a company, an organization, an institution, now the idea is just to get more reps to strengthen that muscle so they can have better instinct and a greater repertoire of potential solutions at their disposal.
Well, that's great, Marcus, in theory. I couldn't resist. You killed me with that one. There's a reason. It's theory. Good Lord.
I mean, seriously, it's like, when you sit down when you stand up from your chair and you sit back down without looking back at the chair, why do you do that? Because theoretically, there was no force implied on the chair for it to move, so it should still be there. And if you sat down, the chair wasn't there, you'd be surprised. Why? Because it would be counterintuitive to the theory. We use theory for everything. Everything. We just don't have great theory. But if we have better theory, we have a better way to describe the world. And that, I believe, I'm so grateful for the academic part of what I do. I became a 1,000 times better practitioner because I became a better academic.
I love it, and it is great when you can do both. Well, you've made me smile on many fronts, from theory jokes to Sexy Lover 24 in Denver. But now it is my turn to ask you for a brand that has made you smile recently.
So this one might be a cheat because they're a client of mine. But I didn't touch this work in particular. So I feel like there's some distance. McDonald's recently, they're celebrating Grimace's birthday.
I saw that.
And I think it's just the coolest thing. Shout out to our clients at McDonald's and the team at Wieden+Kennedy. McDonald's has done such a tremendous job of getting to the truth of their fans, of their people. And they talk to consumers, they talk to the people, their patrons, not like consumers, but like fans. McDonald's talks to fans like fans. They know all the nuances of what it means to be a fan of McDonald's, and realizing just how important Grimace is to the community of people who love McDonald's. Just look at McDonald's advertising 10 years ago. You didn't see any of those guys. You didn't see Hamburglar. You didn't see Grimace. And being able to sort of pull back into nostalgia in a way that feels still contemporary makes me smile a little bit. It brings out the 9-year-old Marcus in me. And I think that's kind of awesome when a brand can provide just a shot, of serotonin in that way, in a world where it feels like that everything's trying to empty your bucket on a daily basis. To get a little dose of serotonin is pretty sweet. So shout out to McDonald's for that one.
So with the inside track though, do you know what Grimace is?
I do not know. I mean, we need language for that.
There we go. I was going to say that's your follow-up book. That's going to help us with the language of understanding grimace. Well, I can't think of anyone better than a cultural translator to dive into the next big question of our time.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I love it.
Marcus, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
You can find me on all the socials at Mark to the C. My website is marktothec.com. That's MarkTothec, like Marcus to the Collins, Mark to the C. Where you can find about me, you can find more about the book, where all books are sold. And I'd love to see you there. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can find at onbrandpodcast.com. Marcus Collins, thanks for being on brand with us.
Many, many thanks.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.